Hello, my name's Dean Miller. I'm a mechanical engineering major at the University of Toledo, and this is a program working with Georgetown professor Eric Koester. He started a Creator Institute to enable college students to create their own books, and he worked at a system that you work with your community at your school to get it published within a year. So this is
Crazy.
just a yeah, it is. So this is just a session to learn more about the process, um, how it all started, and kind of the schedule for how the goal is going to be achieved.
You should tell a little bit about your book idea, because I think that's an interesting thing too. I think why is an engineer writing a book is a question that the skeptical person would ask. But tell a little bit about yours, because I think it's an interesting story of why that was intriguing to you.
Yeah, all right. So as an engineering major, when I started thinking about engineering, I was always told you need to be really good at math, you need to be good at science, and that's kind of it. You don't really need to have many other skills. But since going through engineering school, going through a couple of internships, I've learned that problem solving, be able to think about problems from many different perspectives is more important. And you need to develop your soft skills, or else you're just going to be the engineer that sits in the cubicle that no one knows, and that the work doesn't actually accomplish anything because you need to be able to communicate that with the people making the decisions. So I just wanted to write a book about other engineers' perspectives on this, kind of how they develop throughout their careers, how the importance of problem solving for them, and just how their careers have been going.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I remember our conversation when we started talking about and I think your original question to me was like, I don't know what I'd write about, and I think it was interesting to hear, as you unpack this. I think a lot of people have an idea that they want to explore in them, and so it was fun to kind of collaborate through that. And I remember the moment where you're like, wait, I could write this book, and I was like, yes, this is the book you should write. So yeah, totally awesome. So well, I'll pile on a little bit here, Dean, and I guess first off, like, big props to you, because I remember, as I shared with you, it's about so far I've had this crazy level of experience here, and one of the big things I've learned is that it's really isolating and lonely to do a book. And so this idea here of kind of what we've done at Georgetown and now other places has been really neat. So I've been, this wouldn't be happening if it weren't for Dean saying, like, yeah, I think this is something that other people would benefit from, and I'd love to get a community behind it. So it's sort of neat. And I think it's even neat. We're kind of like trying to bring other schools to participate together. And so all sorts of cool stuff. But yeah, I'll share a little bit of the story behind this thing a bit. My name's Eric Koester. As Dean said, I'm a professor here at Georgetown. I kind of came to this, though, from sort of an interesting way. I actually started my career mostly as an entrepreneur. I've been starting companies for a long time. I was on the West Coast for a bit of this time, about 8 years, and eventually moved to DC to start another company. And I was doing that, and kind of one day out of the blue, I get a call from someone at Georgetown asking if I'd be interested in teaching an entrepreneurship class. And I kind of like did one of these, like, me? Like, I don't think I would have gotten into Georgetown. So the fact that you're asking me to do it is pretty hilarious. But it was great. Like, it was really, really interesting to do. I started teaching MBAs and undergrads, kind of a very startup-y set of classes, and I really enjoyed it. But as I sort of shared with Dean, it kind of felt unfulfilling. It felt like it was just a class, right? Like, people would come in, they'd leave, and that was sort of it. It wasn't really like having a big impact on the students. And for me, that was kind of like, I wasn't, I was doing it because I wanted to actually mean something. And so I thought a lot about it, and I was like, all right, I want to do something different then that actually would mean something, would move the needle. And so I thought a lot about it, and I thought, all right, like, what if I basically just said, like, what could I do that was impacted my life? And what I shared with Dean was, when I was in my 20s, I had the chance to write and publish 2 books. Now, these were not bestsellers. I didn't make any money from them, but the process for me was just huge. It sort of changed my whole trajectory. People saw me differently. I saw myself differently. And it was this kind of like inflection point in my own life. And so I thought about it more, and I was like, what if I forced all my students to write a book? And so that's literally what I did. I walked into class and said, all right, all of you are writing books this semester. And the reaction was like they'd seen a ghost. Like, what is wrong with Eric? Why would he do this to us? And I get it, right? I mean, if a professor assigns you a 10-page paper, people oftentimes freak out at that. Here's me saying, you're going to write a 200-page book. But what I told them is sort of the same thing that I told Dean right away. I was like, listen, this is a process. Like, you can go through it. And it really is something that step by step by step, it's doable. It wasn't, I mean, I didn't make it up. I listened to a whole bunch of authors and learned how they did it. And I was like, wow, this is teachable. So I told them it was a process. And the second part of it I said is like, listen, I mean, you really can write on whatever you want. The goal of this is to see this book as a tool that's going to open doors for you, whether it's career-wise or, you know, in a career path you want, or an industry you want to break into, or a startup, or whatever it is. Like, that's sort of the goal of all of it. And so the crazy thing about this is it just happened to work. Like, over the last 15 months, more than 100 of my students have gone on to publish. And it has been kind of like crazy to see. I mean, as I told Dean, only about 30 college students per year typically publish books. So something crazy was happening. And it wasn't only the book publishing part that was so interesting. It was just to see like how students were using their books. I mean, they were using this to, you know, get hired in venture capital firms, to start their own companies, to, you know, work in, you know, professional sports teams and Facebook and Google and kind of everything in between. And so what happened next is part of the reason why I actually connected with Dean. Is I thought, when I saw how powerful this was, I thought, all right, like, I'm going to help other professors do this at other schools. Like, let's make this thing. Every student should have access to this because it's really powerful. And the reaction was like, was pretty tepid, to be honest, or pretty negative maybe. Like, you know, why should students write books? What do they know? And that's like the totally wrong answer. It's like, you know, let students learn. And if they can create something great, yeah, definitely let them publish. They should. And so, or this takes too much time, I can't do this thing. So I realized very quickly, like, this was never going to happen unless I sort of let students do it and let them bring it through the process. And so that's kind of what I said to Dean. I was like, listen, this works if you build a community, you do it. And if you're interested in doing it, writing your own book and kind of bringing other people along, I'm in. And so that's kind of been the journey. It's been really interesting to see. You know, the goal of this is to take a group of people, and there's people across the country doing this through a process where they get to a first draft manuscript in the summer and they have options. There's some interesting new innovative publishing things that are happening today. There's traditional publishing, there's self-publishing, there's all kinds of things that can happen. But it starts with getting something that is publishable. And that's kind of what the goal is. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do to see if we can give people this opportunity. And it really has been kind of just nutty to watch and see. And I think I sent Dean a few of the books from the authors. And I mean, they're real. It's a real thing. You create something important in your life. And so, yeah, I guess I'll share two things. And then Dean, you can maybe, you know, take it from here. But two things I'll say. Number one, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have enough time. This is impossible. I can't possibly do this one. And understandably so. It feels like an enormous thing. But the interesting thing about it really is because it is a process, it's not so daunting. I mean, we get together once a week for like an hour. There's kind of a workshop-y format. And usually authors say they spend 2 to 3 hours outside of it per week. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But it's kind of, you know, that's about the time. And it really is sort of the big learning I had. The first time through it, I was like kind of rigid about process. But I realized that different people are going to approach this differently. Some people are going to go every week kind of making progress to some like deadlines and milestones, and other people are going to be a little more episodic about it. They'll do a lot one week and take the next week off and whatever. They'll sort of go through their process. And still other people, and you know who you are, will basically make a little bit of progress along the way. And then kind of the week or two before you're turning in the first draft, they'll bunch of Red Bull and get 20,000 words done. So different people do different things. I introduced Dean to Brian, who's one of my first authors. And it was, you know, I just learned this fairly recently about Brian too. He published a book called Indie Gaming about the intersection of entrepreneurship and video games, and very interesting book. But he told me that 3 days before the first draft was due, he did 24,000 words in 3 days. And I was like, Jesus, sounds terrible. But you know, I think when you care about the top subject and that sort of stuff, it certainly works. So anyway, so there you go. That's, you know, I think it's definitely doable for people. It is not crazy, and it's designed to work. We'll, you know, go through the semester, and then there's a little time after finals when you sort of assemble it into a first draft. So that's the first thing. And the second thing really is that, you know, you can find a topic even if you don't know what you want to write yet. I don't think that Dean knew that this was the book he was going to write when we first talked. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah. But I think the idea really is like, find something you care about, that you're interested in, and that you believe is going to open doors. And so I talk to anyone that wants to talk about it, about where their book wanted to go, and sort of see. So yeah, so if you're intrigued, if you're interested, like, I'd love to chat. And it looks like we'll be doing some cool things with, you know, collaborating with people at other schools. And yeah, it's very doable. But I'm, you know, big, huge props to Dean for saying like, all right, like, I think this is something in my life that I want to do. So it's been fun to get to collaborate, and this sort of wouldn't happen without you, my friend. And excited, he's been working on his book for the last couple of weeks, so it's been sort of neat to see, and yeah, kind of crazy to think.
Hmm. Yep. So, so thank you for the more information.
Run through everything else, and then yeah, like I said, if anyone's interested, definitely Dean's got my contact information. Happy to chat topics and see where this whole thing goes.
Yep. I'll definitely send anyone interested along to have their book track.
Perfect, sounds good. Thanks, Dean. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So now we are going to go through the slides and learn a bit more about this program. So that was a very nice introduction from Professor Coaster. So here's a bit about the agenda for learning more about this program. Um, just try reloading this page. So what we're going to be doing, the goal is to publish your book by November of 2019, so just a few months away. So it's going to be, it probably looks pretty intimidating from the front, but with this program, you learn how to attack it correctly. You don't have to get all stressed out because you're doing it alone. So there's a new way of thinking about this where it's a group of we that write the books, and it's not going to be the same process you might see an author use in the movies. So why is a book so difficult usually? You're doing it alone. It's just you and the page, which can be pretty isolating. You've never done it before. We're all pretty young. We're college students, so you don't know where to start. It's a daunting process. You have to write the whole book, which just can feel impossible. There's no one holding you accountable along the way. Most of us are used to professors saying the deadlines for everything, and this changes that. And how do you know if what you've written so far is good or not? There's definitely a lot of self-doubt that can go on. We're writing a book, like we're experienced in a topic, but a lot of the book is becoming experienced in the topic, and you don't know what to do when you get stuck. So imagine you had a group of friends who were all writing books and met every week to talk about their journey, and you can help each other and support each other. And this group of creators will become that. So what we do for this process is we meet weekly for 1 hour. It's going to be, and then you'll have about 2 to 4 hours outside of this normally, like Eric said. It's about a 20-week process. There are many targets along the way, a bit of a schedule that is flexible to work with anyone. There's coaching and instruction throughout it from Eric and Brian and whoever's needed. And there's also going to be editing feedback. So what we'll do is we'll go through all of that and become that group of friends that make books. So the first goal is to help you develop a first draft by mid-June. And this is usually about 25,000 words. So we'll finish finals, then we'll compile the first draft manuscript. So from there, you have several options to consider if you're approved for publishing. And this will be talked about more once everything gets started. So why write a book as a college student? That opens up many doors. So here's 5 examples of writers. I was sent these books by Eric. So if anyone ever wants to see them to reference or to read them, let me know and I can get them to you. But like Madison, she is very into theme parks. She was hired from this book. She was hired to work at Disney. She's been featured on many large podcasts about theme parks. And she's also hosted a book lecture and signing at their campus bookstore. So Antonia, she's been hired at Masterclass. She met Tim Ferriss, and is a publisher in China, is translating the book into Chinese and distributing. and their book was about hacking college and like an entrepreneur. So Ezra, she was actually nominated for Forbes 30 under 30 in 2018, which is a huge deal, especially for a new college student. Her book was featured on NPR segment, and she built a network of over 100 female entrepreneurs through her book, which is, oh, great. Building your network is definitely one of the best things you can do at school. So Dylan, he wrote his book Play by Heart. He's been hired at Goldman Sachs since then. He spoke at a New York City area high school music program and had the founder of SoundCloud and Jay-Z and Beyonce's drummers endorse his book, which endorsements help sell. So Jerome, he's published his book as well. He's spoken at a dozen high schools with over 2,000 people listening. He's been accepted to a summer startup accelerator. He donated the proceeds of his book to his My Brother's Keeper, which charity, it's always a good thing. And this led to his first TED Talk. So where can this bring you? It could open the doors to a new job or career path. It will help you build a network of people that you connect with through your book, and it'll help you be different. You'll be able to stand out in a very positive way because only 30 college students publish a book annually with a publisher. So this semester, this whole process is divided into 3 stages to get your first draft. Get smart, create stories, and first manuscript. So the first stage of get smart lasts about 4 weeks normally. And this is where you start to learn more about where you want your book to head. And then you start to schedule interviews with professionals in the field that you want to write your book on. So like I'm scheduling interviews with different engineers in fields. So you aim for about 6, but that number is up to being adapted wherever you can find. Like I've had 3 so far. I only have like 1 more scheduled before that 4-week target. And then you also do secondary interviews, which is researching someone and doing enough research on them that you can have a story written about them without actually talking to them. So for more difficult people to reach out to. So the next stage is to create stories. So from these interviews, you're going to create a story or more with each interview. So you talk about what you learned while interviewing the person, and you can make a story out of it. So you're going to target 20,000 words just with these stories for your first draft. There's going to be some themes that emerge, which will help the flow of the book, and then there will be 3 checkpoints with your editor. And this takes about 10 weeks. And then the next stage, or the last stage, is the first manuscript. So this is where you target that 25,000 words first draft manuscript. This will be about right after finals time. So this is structured on a template chapter. It'll have your introduction, and you'll be ready for Professor Costa's feedback about your book before it goes to the main editor with the publisher. So those are the 3 stages to get your first draft. And finals are about right there. So the goal this semester is you're going to have a first draft with 20,000 words of your stories, which is really amazing to think about. And then after finals, you organize this into your 25,000 word manuscript. And the important thing to remember is it's very doable. Eric has done this with many students. He's found a process that works, and he's helping us do it. As long as you put the work in, of course, which is a few hours a week. And you have to remember that you have help. You have Eric, you have your editor, you have his whole teaching staff, and you also have the community that we'll be building. So just remember, and also remember it works. He's had 100 people go through this process and get published. So some of the details is these sessions will happen once a week. They'll be recorded the same as this is being. You will pay a $150 due that goes straight to the editor that helps throughout the process of getting these stories written and helps get your book made. And then you'll begin work with your editor after week 4. So some key milestones are 20,000 words by finals and 25,000 by June 20th. And then we publish in November. And here's just a picture of some of Eric's past authors. So if you're interested, this is the link to schedule a book topic chat with Eric, and I can also get that to any of you. And you also answer a few questions that help this conversation go. But if you don't have a topic yet, don't worry. These topics can be about anything, and he'll help you find the best one. He's really good at it. He's had much experience with it now, and he can help you get a topic out of anything. So there aren't any questions, so that will be it for this presentation. So if anyone's interested in learning more about this whole program, let me know. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or email, and I'll get you connected with Eric, and he'll get your chat going, and you can be part of this really cool process. We get to write a book in less than a year, get it published, get our names out there a bit more, and make a very positive impact for a college student. So thank you for listening. If anyone wants to learn more, let me know again, and just have a good night. Bye.